Well, we are talking to the captain, and I guess it was the captain, Dean, of the Protea carp angling team that took part in the World Championships in Croatia. You just returned, and we are on our way to the World Champs in Hungary. So we sort of pass each other.
No, absolutely, absolutely, Werner. And I'm sure you guys are pretty excited. For us, it's nice to be home. It's always tough being away like that, and representing your country is always such an honor. But yeah, I'd look forward to you guys also posting some good results and keeping us up to date whilst you're out of the country.
Dean, the Protea carp team, of which you were part for a long time, has had some excellent results in the past, and there was a streak where they were really on top of the world. And then there was a little bit of a slowdown, and you guys have gone back to drawing board, and you've done a couple of things, and you went over to Croatia, and you did a lot of good things. What about the results? Are you happy? What is in your head about returning from that trip?
Yeah, so Werner, I think first and foremost, let me start by saying it's always an honor and a privilege to represent the country, be it behind the rods or be it behind the team. So, if I start out with that, the disappointment, am I disappointed? Coming from personally being involved in 4 world championships where we took the gold medal, and also one where we took a bronze in a 5th, and having done 10 world championships where I've seen it grown from 15 countries participating to where we're now heading to 40 countries. The dynamics of the championship has changed significantly, and I don't think our average viewers actually know that. And the dynamic change and the shift in the venues and how the system works has been quite substantial. So how do I feel about the result? Well, first and foremost, there was 30 countries that participated this year. And, there was actually a stage in the tournament where South Africa was 30th. All right. And we can speak a little bit more around that in a moment. And we made a couple of strategic changes during the event, and we clawed our way back up to 22nd. But having said that, in sectors, we had a 4th place in Sector A, and I'll speak to that a bit. We had a 12th place and a 13th place in sectors B and C. So, I want to say I'm going to remind us, South African carp anglers can compete with the world's best. There's no doubt about it. We've shown it before. The techniques, the technology has changed a lot. However, I think one of the things that's been setting us back is the inability to go and practice. So from a bait perspective, not much. Okay, what we went with, what was in our arsenal, what our research had shown us is actually what we caught the fish on. All right.
And as I said, what was that?
2 very different lakes. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that, Werner. It's your this is a public platform. So the next thing, someone else is going to go onto the internet and they're going to listen to this interview and they're going to say, oh, so that's what South Africa did.
Yeah, well, okay, well, whatever you can share.
Okay. So we knew prior to the time that we were going to do range fishing at range. And we knew prior to the time that the setup we were going to use, from what we had done our research on, was going to be a helicopter setup, a combi link setup, and a D-rig on a combi link setup. Okay, so for those who understand our sport, they'll know what that is, right? We knew the colors. We didn't know the flavors, because that's the one thing when you're doing the research. You can see the combinations of what they're doing, but you don't know what the liquid is that they're using. So we did establish what the liquid was during the tournament, but you would have established that had you practiced. So it took us quite a couple of hours to work through a set of, typical European liquids before we got what it was that we were looking for. So what did we change in Sandor? It was purely the distance. So, okay, what does that mean? So we had gone in, we knew it was a fishery. We knew that we'd have to fish at range. From the research we had done, it looked like 160 meters. Okay. In principle, what we quickly worked out in the tournament, and that was the stopwatches that I was referring to, that it had to be between 6.8 and 7 seconds. Okay, now 6.8 and 7 seconds is about a 12-meter differential between those two. But what does that mean? That means when the person starts to cast and you actually see the rod start to load, okay, so you're starting the pull through and the rod starts loading, you start the stopwatch. And you stop the stopwatch when the bait strikes the water. Okay, that gives you the flight time. All right. We didn't know what distance that was, but we knew what time that was. So it was a constant. And I then went into our C sector on the second day they were still blanking. They'd also caught undersized fish, but still blanking. And I had a conversation with Lapis. Lapis being let's call it the range cast on the peg. So you try and have a range caster on each of your duos. And I said to him, look, Lapis, this is what we're going to have to do. I need you to get to 7 seconds. We stripped off on the peg. We stripped off the 10-pound line. We put the 7-pound line on. We stripped off the fluorocarbon leaders and put braided leaders on. Reason being, you want no stretch in the system and you want maximum flight distance. And in the tournament, we literally stood there and he just threw a weight and he just threw a weight and he just threw a weight until we got it to 7 seconds. Till we got to 7 seconds. All right. What we didn't know. So now you've got it. Okay. Now you know every cast you've got to try and hit that clip, irrespective of weather. And what we didn't know was what was the distance. So now you've got the 7 seconds. So you bring it back and you measure off the wraps, and then you've got the actual length. It was 192 meters.
Yes.
And I don't think people fully appreciate or understand when you are already fishing at your maximum range and you ask your Protea guys who are already competent above most others that you now need them to go to a place they've never been before. And you've got to help convince them that they can get there. And you've got to work with them in a tournament until they get there. And of course, once they get there, they got the result. Yes. So we got Lapis and Johan in on the second day. And then on the third day, because of the venue differentials, on the third day I then went to, and you got limited time when you can go in. On the third day I went to Color and Huckham, and we had the same conversation. And stripped off down to 7-pound line, going until they got to 7 seconds. And once they got to 7 seconds, it was a matter of just time, and they were on the board and they kept coming with fish.
Is there anything else apart from the distance that you think made a big difference? And I've got a minute and 30 seconds for that, that made a real difference in terms of your variables?
Yes, there is, because in Lapovac Lake, they weren't fishing at range because they had the 6.5 meter water. They actually, Jordan and Vieille were fishing at 80 meters and 100 meters. So, I mean, that's, quite easy for anyone to do. And that's why I can say, yes, I think there was a difference. The bait, the hook combination, we got from Jordan and Vieille. Yeah. Okay, because they on the first night they were on the scoreboard with nice big fish. So we brought the hook combination to Sandor. But in Sandor, because of the distance we had to go, we couldn't go with PVAs. So I then took a typical European liquid. We tried a few that I'd put down the lead core. So I'd let it run down the lead core and absorb into the lead core, let it hang for a while, that it absorbs into the lead core, that at least when we casted it at that range, you were introducing the scent into the area via the lead core. I then took that back to Vieille and Jordan, and that was the modification that they made on their last night. And I mean, you saw on their last night, they went from like 1 fish per night. I think they got 6, through the last evening. They unfortunately lost 2 of them, but they were catching massive fish. So yeah, that's working out a game plan on the move.
Yeah. Well, that's great performance. Then they started, they really got onto it. So how did you conclude in terms of that principle? What is the biggest learning from that principle?
Okay, so the one thing I just need to share on that, right? So when you fish in these international events, you do a draw, and it's a grid system. And people won't know this, okay? And it's terrible when you're the captain and you know this and you can't share it with your team, right? But the way they do the grid, they rate the pegs green, yellow, and red. Okay, so they try and ensure that every country gets they call it a fair draw. In other words, green is a good peg, yellow is a okay peg, red is like a no-go peg, right? And Vieja and Jordan had a red peg. Okay, so why is this important? They came fourth on a red peg.
From a red peg.
They beat Croatia in their sector, and I remind everyone, Croatia was the world champions. Okay, so what I'm saying is the final game plan that we landed on too late, okay, in the tournament, working it out on the fly, said that even on a red peg, we could get a fourth place. So I take comfort out of that to say, actually, we got a plan, but we got it too late. All right. And the learnings I take from that is I think the practice is imperative. If I just cast my mind back as I started off when I said, everyone we won, we went and practiced. Everyone we finished in the medals, we went and practiced. Every single one. Everyone that South Africa has fallen out of the medals, there's no practice. And it's about affordability.
So looking at it, and that's one of the givens. So you can't practice, you can't practice. But what do you think if you, and I know hindsight is always perfect, but what do you think could you have done better to get to that plan quicker, apart from going to practice? What if you have to do it all over again, what would you do different?
I think there was one thing I missed. Now I'm speaking as a captain, right? I think there was one thing I missed in the beginning. And at the captain's meeting in the beginning, they told us that these boys had been put out at 200 meters. All right. And that was to control, where people can cast. You can imagine. So when I tell you, look, the boys have been put out at 200 meters, nobody's even worried about that. 200 meters is like it's far, right? Nobody's worried about it. And what I missed is one country asked in that meeting, can we cast past the boys? So in their mind, their game plan was already set to go to 200 meters. And I think that's where I missed it.
So the casting game was quite important.
We knew it was going to be a casting game, okay? But when you're talking 200 meters or 190 meters, you're now talking Olympic casting. You're not just talking, world championship style casting. I need to remind the viewers again, when South Africa was winning, all right, we were fishing with 5 pound line, all right? And on this methodology, we were fishing 105, 110 meters because our kit and our equipment hadn't evolved to be able to deal with that. We were using typical Papgooi type stuff to try and do it. And we were winning at those ranges because European countries were fishing 30 pound line.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, European countries are fishing 5 pound line, 7 pound line, 10 pound line. The technology and the rod technology all changed. And I think I missed that. So, and not about Sandor, not about Lapovac. Lapovac, I still say they did exceptionally well on a red peg in that lake. Okay, and they beat the country that won. So I can't ask more from anybody in that regard. But in the Sandor Lake, I think we started with a 10 pound, and we should have started with a 7 pound. And I mean, literally those 20 or 30 meters throughout the tournament, the apps also indicated that the fishing was going to go from 67% down to 32, down to 10. So we knew it was going to get more difficult in the tournament. We knew the weather pattern was changing in the tournament. So that first day was actually vital in Sandor Lake. And when we were catching the 9 and 10 fish and the other people were like watching us catch the fish, I think that's probably where we lost it. Had we been catching the fish at the right distance, they would have been the right size. And I think that would have shifted our whole outcome. Yeah.
In conclusion, one or two things that any of our more social anglers that goes to these type of lakes, what type of advice can you give them?
So do all your research, but do yourself a favor when you get to that lake. Walk around it. So we, as the entire team, spent the best part of 6 hours walking around Lapovac, looking at every single swim, but that isn't what we were looking for. It's a public venue. It's heavily fished. And I actually shared a photograph with you, Werner, when we did our debrief post that day, where we packed out an entire array of stuff that we had found. And so what does that help you? It gave us the color schemes, it gave us the sizes, it gave us whether it was sinking, intermediate, or floating. And so as a social guy, if you plan in a trip and you're going to invest so much time and money, rather plan it in that you have a good day, before you make your decision where you're going to sit on the lake and what are you finally going to do. Just walk around, talk to people, have a good look on what's lying on the ground for everybody to find.
Okay, so that local information is much more important than competitive information. Is what does the social guys do next to the dam? Because they've been fishing there for years.
Absolutely. And you must remember, on the competitive platform, the pressure is extreme. Okay, and the fish feel the pressure. So when you go and do your own private outing, there won't be that pressure. So there's less line pressure, there's less food in the water, so you're more likely to have more fish available on your swim for you to catch. But if you're just in the right color regime, and you don't know the venue, even if you're just in the right color regime because you've walked around and you've picked up the stuff that the guys are fishing with, it's definitely a game changer. It was for us.
Well, Dean, thank you so much for sharing. And I think at the later stage, we'll talk again about a little bit more intriguing and more specific to the captaincy and so forth. So we are looking forward to that. Thank you for sharing.
Werner, my privilege and pleasure again to all the boys in the team. I just hail them. I think they did exceptionally well under very, very difficult circumstances. And to all the supporters back in South Africa, just thank you. It's amazing to be out there and see all those messages and stuff coming in and support. I do believe that the South African carp angling still has a great future. I do think that the dynamics of World Championships are going to change. They might have to change it into different regions. So I'm looking forward to South Africa getting golds moving forward again. And then just lastly, Werner, with you and your teammates that are heading out, privately, I'll share the baits with you. So don't worry about it. But no, you guys must enjoy it. Thanks, Werner.
Thank you so much.